I want attacking, purposeful football all the time. Now we're going to have backs against the wall and we're going to fight, and we're going to fight hard. You've got to show me all the guts and all the determination you've got in your body. You've got to inspire me.
A marvellous kick. That's as good as you'll ever see. And puts Graham back in front.
I don't know about you guys, but if I see one bloke walking out of here, give the paddle back from people out there for a good effort, I'll spew up.
From inside the centre square, Boydie kicked the goal. Boydie kicked the goal from inside the centre.
Hey Pack, welcome to Danny Boyd, a podcast about a football club that exists, and we watch them and we feel emotions, and some of them are negative. I'm Danny McGinlay. Tom Boyd is on the other side of the internet. Boydie, I mean, here we are. So this is we're 12 hours, 14 hours after that Hawthorn match. Still very, very annoyed. Hey, Socceroos, weren't they good?
I think you've also missed one added detail into why you feel the way you feel, which is, if you have the emotional roller coaster of being a Dogs supporter last night.
Yes.
Of pain, bit of hope, frustration, a little bit more hope, agony.
Yep.
Plus you've had a few beers.
Well, I had to. So what I did is I stayed around in Top Dogs having a few beers just to avoid Hawthorn fans on the train. And then I remembered the Socceroos were playing Japan in a World Cup qualifier. So I ran over to the Mail Exchange, watched the last 20 minutes of that. So I had another beer there, and then I got home. And anyway, it's just, thankfully I avoided all Hawthorn fans on the train. That was a bonus.
Yeah. They're a smug bunch at the best of times.
Oh, they're just, and they're very much like Carlton fans in they don't understand prior opportunity. They'll just call ball as soon as a tackle. It's like they see it, and it's like they might as well just yell tackle.
Yeah, to be fair, though, both players, coaches, clubs, and umpires don't seem to understand prior opportunity at the moment. There does seem to be like this very strange focus on like someone gets tackled, we're going to ping them is like the default, which is very strange, especially given the fact that, like you get slung around and the player's not really comprehensively being tackled and they dispose of the ball, but then they go, oh, well, actually, yeah, you spun around too many times versus, hey, you got absolutely smashed and didn't kick the ball. But they're like, yeah, but he didn't have that much time. I'm like, so what's the priority here? Is the priority that someone disposes of the ball correctly, which I would argue should be the case, right? Within reason, you can't just spin around in circles forever. But if you don't have a comprehensive tackle that stops them releasing the ball, then it's not really a tackle. And then on the other side of the coin, it's like, well, actually, it's how long they hold the ball for, which we want our players to hold the ball because the longer that they're holding it, the more likely, or the confidence to hold the ball, the more likely that they're going to attack the gap or the space or actually make the game exciting, right? Otherwise, they're just going to get rid of it, and then it's going to be a rolling maul. And that's why I think in some ways there's an element of that plays into some of the crap quality of games that we see this year, where it seems like 6 teams are good and good to watch, 2 of which played last night. 6 of the teams are average and terrible to watch, and then 6 of the teams are terrible and terrible to watch.
Last night was not good to watch, though. The Hawks suffocated us. They were playing a very defensive style, and they're completely nullified. Bevo got out-coached. It's 4 in a row we've lost to them. It was not fun at all. Like even I imagine for Hawks fans, it wasn't fun. They never felt relaxed until the final minutes. Like it felt like at any point we could have just run over the top of them, but we just never did. We Sanders missed that shot in the opening minute of the last quarter, which would have put us back within 10 points, and it was just a world of frustration.
Yeah, so I disagree. I don't think Bevo was out-coached. I think what happened was that Hawthorn played such a phenomenally high-pressure game to start the game that they got a scoreboard break. Once you get a scoreboard break, you don't have to play and roll the dice as often because you don't have to make up a margin or extend a margin. You can just defend it. And so what it looked like to me was that they were under the Dogs boys were under so much pressure so much of the time. They used all of their energy to try and not let Hawthorn score during those periods. That once they got out of that bubble in terms of going offensively, we were cooked. So we had no drive to move the ball through our forward half. And then even some of those shots that you mentioned, Bont missing that easy one in the second quarter, I think, which would have put us right back in, or right at the end of the first. We missed a few sort of in that period as well. And you sort of go, they just had the energy and the juice last night, and that's why they won, to be honest.
Yeah, and look, we only lost by 22 points, and that's the worst we've played all year, and the best I think they've played for a long time, and still only 22 points, so that's a positive spin on it. But it did feel, even it felt like a 10-goal loss.
Yeah. See, but from home, it felt like we were right there.
Right, okay.
And we just weren't getting we just couldn't scratch back that scoreboard pressure that they put on us in the first 15 minutes.
No.
Like the game was won in the first 15 minutes. As silly as that sounds.
Yeah, well, we knew they'd come out snarling because Mitchell put the firecracker up them, but I thought we'd be able to sustain that, the way we did against St Kilda and Carlton. It just kept waiting for them to do stuff. Apparently Treloar copped a corky early on. Bont looked out of sorts. Like, everyone looked out of sorts, except I thought Harms did pretty well, and Lath did a couple of great things. But overall, and look, I'm already sick of people blaming Gardner. Gardner got left one out a couple of times against Chol, and I thought he did his best. He's had the reason people are questioning why he's been chosen over Buslinger. I know Gardner's done very well in the VFL, so that's his spot was earned. And but a few times, was caught one out. But already, people just always I get so annoyed. People just blame the same, whoever's just come fresh into the team.
Yeah, and they always blame the key back.
Yep.
And they always blame Ryan Gardner. They have since literally since he took my spot on the list, they've done the same thing.
Yeah.
They did it with Fletch before him. And again, there's not many players who play in that position who aren't much maligned until they're like the best in the competition.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And it's not a fun place to play, and it's a certain type. It's kind of like how like broadly speaking in cricket, there's some perspective that a lot of the like fast bowlers are like they're sort of service oriented. They're the workhorses of the team. It's not always the case, right? You have your Mitchell Johnsons and those types, but typically it's like they turn up and they just bowl.
Yeah.
That's kind of like what the fullback's like. They just turn up and they get whipped by the fans, they get whipped by the coach, they get whipped by everyone else, and they have to play on the highest paid, best players in the competition.
Yep.
And they just suck it up and keep going. And I think like I remember looking at, there was one moment where Chol came up on screen, and he is a monster.
He is a big unit, yes.
His rig is like it reminded me of I remember watching I think a Suffer Powell warm up for one of the 100-meter sprints.
Okay.
And it's like the 100-meter sprinters have such big hamstrings and big glutes that they can't actually walk normally. Yeah, it's really strange.
They look like action figures, like He-Man or they're the male Barbie dolls.
Yeah, but even and they're so specifically built to just run forward, straight forward fast.
Yes.
And I was looking at him sort of like, and I mean this as a compliment, like half waddling. And I'm like, this guy is just a specimen.
What's also the swagger of the hock balls?
Yeah. Anyway, it's frustrating. But again, it's one of those things where I think where footy is such a funny game where, if you asked us before last night, what are the chances of the Bulldogs kicking less than 80 points at Marvel? And you'd be like, pretty low. What about less than 60? You'd say almost zero chance that we did that, right?
Yep.
And as I said, I think that the first 15, 20 minutes, to your point, Hawthorn get a massive rev up. So you've got to come out absolutely perfect because you've been useless. And, very publicly, the players are commenting on how they basically had to bring their mouth guards. We come off a bye. We're a little bit soft, and I don't mean soft like weak. I mean soft like we haven't had the match experience from the week before. Little sloppy. Libba fumbled once in the first quarter, which he never does, ever. I don't think he's fumbled.
Oh, there were so many fumbles last night. Every hand pass just seemed that couple of inches off. So rather than getting the clean possession, you had to move, and then Hawks would just jump on you with their high pressure.
Yeah, and look, I think that it speaks back to perfect storm. You've got a team who is absolutely motivated to do the one thing that's really difficult to sustain through a bye, which is to have all of the energy, all of the pressure, all of the hardness, all of that sort of stuff. And that's what they brought. And it obviously was too much for us. I don't think it's panic stations by any stretch of the imagination. I think we look forward to a pretty good draw in the next few weeks. But Bevo will be very unhappy, I would say. That was a really important game for us to win, and
really
and the boys
important.
didn't have the juice.
Well, we've lost all these important games. We lose to the Cats. We lost to the Suns. You know, we're a bit of flat track bullies at the moment.
Yeah, it is actually starting to spread a little bit that way, isn't it? I think the positive spin on it is none of them have been a debacle. You know what I mean?
Last night was a debacle. Last night, no, I'm calling it debacula. Shambolic.
I don't think there's such thing as a debacle that's 22 points.
I'm calling it. No, well, my standards are very high this year.
Okay. Well, that's good. So Danny sets the universal standards for debacles in AFL football.
I do now. Yep. Well, hey, come on.
Points.
We're broadcasting here. I've got to be preposterous. I've got to have a hot take. This is as close to a hot take as I get here. Come on.
Well, at least we'll distract ourselves with an even scarier prospect on the Patreon by talking through Bond's contract re-signing and what might be actually going through his head at the moment. All speculation, but having been through one of these big things before, I'll have I'll share how I think it's playing out at the moment. Mm-hmm. But not a lot of love on the performance scorecard last night, unfortunately, for our boys.
No, really. I feel. Why do we suck after the bye? Because we have repeatedly. We always usually we get paired. We have to go down to Cadinya first thing. But what is it from the player's perspective? Why do we suck after the bye?
Yeah, I don't know. There's a general theory which is really difficult to break up, which is that you need that bye in the middle of the year for rounds 18 through 24, 23. So it's really good for the players to have a proper rest. But it's also really difficult, I think, to when you turn around to a Thursday. I don't know what days they would have had off, but to then go, well, the first session back is typically the biggest training session for the year, like in-season training session.
Okay.
Because you've had a break and they want to get some Ks into your legs. It's also the hardest training session for the year typically, given that they want to basically smash you 5 days from the game to get you back into game mode and feel like you're ready to play AFL football, which is really difficult to replicate in the training environment. So I don't know why we're no good. I think some of it's definitely been scheduling, to your point, and we do just come up against good opposition, and that's always an element of it. You've got to beat the side on the opposition. But yeah, it's obvious that the mix is not right at the moment, and we don't have a great track record coming out of the bye recently, so far as I can recall anyway. Yeah, and
the next few weeks are very winnable games, but I feel even if we do win them, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, but they like we got the Saints, we got the Tigers, we got the Swans, we got North. Next hard game is 12th of July against the Crows, but even that's at Marvel. It's very winnable. I just feel like I'm going to feel hollow even if we win all of those quite easily. And I suppose, in every season you've got to have these stories, these narratives, this roller coaster. It can't just be easy. But I've enjoyed being optimistic all of this year, and this is probably the first time since since last year that I've felt less than optimistic.
I think I'm mildly terrified about this week, to be totally honest with you.
Against the Saints?
Yeah, they're such a rubbish team to play. They're just horrible. It's horrible footy. So to your point, it's like we should win. I hope we win. I expect us to win. But even if we do, I feel like it's going to be like shitty because it's crap to watch them play the Saints, and the Saints are just terrible to watch.
Well, allegedly Darcy's back.
Yeah. But then that's Anyway, I have some, and then just because they play a certain style of footy that can bring you down to that level, even though we comprehensively beat them earlier in the year, I just have some I don't like this week based on how we played last night.
See the negativity. It's there, bubbling away.
But then, so here's my optimistic view on it. The Saints are a bit of and maybe it's some PTSD from broken legs and torn ACLs and 60-point turnarounds.
Oh, yeah.
From a long time ago. But the other two we should walk over the top of, let's be honest. And if we don't, let's not consider that being a possibility. But I also think that realistically, we should be coming into a really good test of whether we're any good and whether we should be cared about at 10-6 or something like that, right?
Should
Basically.
be, yes.
And if we do that, then we'll all just shut up and stop complaining.
If we beat Crows, I mean, the week after that we got the Lions in Brisbane. That's very difficult.
Well, I think my point being is that essentially throughout that period of time during the year, right, we go Crows, Brisbane, Essendon, and Giants, and Melbourne, who have been playing all over the spot. There's 5 weeks there that should, if we play to our ability in the next few weeks, we should be in the perfect position to have no excuses to justify where we finish on the end of the ladder of the year. Do you know what I mean? It's like sometimes I feel like you get through the year and then you go, we had all these injuries, we had all these issues going on and we couldn't quite get it right. And we played some of the easy teams. And then as soon as we sort of get up and go and we play all of the best teams in a row, because there's a big gap between the best and the worst at the moment across the competition. And there's some genuinely horrendous football being played because there is a big defensive bent to the way that the game is being played at the moment. It's kind of like I was talking to a current AFL player at the moment, and the way he explained it to me was it kind of is a bit reminiscent of the old Collingwood days where essentially they were so defensive when Mick Malthouse was a coach. They'd only kick the ball up the sidelines. Do you remember that? It was
so what year are we talking here? Malthouse was there for a while.
I reckon we're talking 2010-ish.
When they won the flag.
When they were good.
Yep.
When they were good. They used to do that dinky little kick up the sideline. Then they'd block the man on the mark. They'd kick it long. And they just play in this really slow but progressive bubble. And they wouldn't open the ground up at all. And so it was really kind of difficult to watch a lot of the time. I feel like that's kind of where the game's gone back to in some ways, where, you know, Collingwood, as an example, play a lot of their footy up that sort of sideline if they need to. And they look good when they're up and going because they've got some real speed through the middle of the ground. But a lot of teams are just like, we're not risking getting goals kicked on turnover, so we're just going to make it a shit fight in the back right-hand corner of the ground for half the game.
Definitely what happened last night.
Yeah. I didn't understand, and I feel like I could see that they cut to Bevo a couple of times during this when this happened, where we'd actually we'd get the momentum back to level. We'd get the ball on the open side of the ground in the back half, and we'd go. Typically, what we'd do is we'd then run, carry, get a handball, kick in. Like we'd move the ball, and it was either like we were out of legs, so we couldn't get someone open on the open side of the ground, or the guys who had the ball were just so out of juice that they couldn't even start to energize that ball again, and we just stopped, kicked it long, stoppage. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Live, it actually looked like they were told to not move the ball so fast. And someone did point out, it looked like the Hawks were not running that hard at us, just sort of waiting for us to make our move so they could smother or get in the way, and that kind of put us off. It was a very odd set of tactics, and it obviously didn't work. And yeah, it was anyway. Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to talk about that game too much more. Do you have any other thoughts on it? I've got some happy things to talk about.
Let's happy way. Let's do a couple of the questions that we've got. Not all of them, obviously. We'll answer most of them on the Patreon.
Yeah.
There's a couple of fan questions that have come in. Let's do those.
Okay, sweet.
And hopefully anything that's positively spun, because otherwise...
Well, we've got a new segment coming up as well, which I want you to remind me. They're called Gigs Facts. Gigs is Andrew Gigach, who is the official historian of the Footscray Football Club. He's sending me a fact a week to put on the pod. We didn't do it last week because we had the bye, and the first week I forgot because when I'm chatting to you, I get lost in your eyes. So we'll do that later on. There's some sizzle coming up, but let's go with some question. This is from Shannon, only a couple of hours ago. How much does luck play in how a game unfolds? As if if a team gets a bunch of loose balls in a row, it seems to build momentum quickly. The ball isn't round, so sometimes you don't get the bounce, and other times you do. A few lucky bounces in a row seems to shift momentum quickly. It must be hard to stop. I think that's more a comment on the Geelong game where they got so much luck. Everything went their way. But yeah, how does it affect you during a game?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's two questions in there. I sort of heard how do you deal with luck, and then how do you deal with momentum, right?
Yes.
Because there's sort of two different things. So the general principle on luck is you try and make your own is essentially the whole point of it, which is, like you think about Bont. Bont turns up to a drop of ball situation where there's a long kick and it hits the hands of a marking contest. He turns up in the right spots 150 times a game.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that 150, he gets the opportunity because he's actually in the right spot, 75, and then he doesn't fumble, so he captures another 20. Like that's sort of like this breakdown. And then a couple of things will go his way where he'll get a lucky bounce here or there. But you wouldn't say luck plays a huge role in terms of how Bond plays each week as an individual. Whereas, as I've sort of described, maybe not for some time on this podcast, when you're a player that's just starting out, the percentage of time that you get things right in a game, whether that be making the right decision by foot or by hand, being able to be clean or not, fumbling or not, fitness-wise or not, and then also just making the right decisions in terms of your positioning on the ground would be like half as many times as what Bont does, because he's right up there and the person who gets it right the most. So then you add into that, you're only right half the time, then you fumble and so on and so forth. That's why you see younger players struggling to have as much of a consistent impact on the game, because it's like almost like a maths equation in some ways. And I think that that's the case with teams as well. If you have a good side with good senior players like we are at the moment, and we definitely still are, that should come into it less and less, where luck shouldn't play a major factor. Having said that, the magic of being an Aussie rules fan is we have an oval ball, which is a bit erratic at times, which plays into the luck department more so than I would say happens in soccer or in particular sports like basketball. And we also have, the erraticness of 18 players per team on the field at any one stage. And so there's always a bit of luck involved in sport, but also in particular, I would say there's more luck and variability in football. But it really, I don't think, makes anywhere near as much difference as what people may think. On the flip side of the coin, momentum plays a huge part in it. So you take into account, that the boys in Geelong kick, 11 straight between them?
Yeah, the Cameron and yeah.
And
we hit the post get five times.
Yeah, and when we start to get some momentum, we get a couple of free kicks go against us. Then you get what seems like a couple of lucky bounces, and then they capitalize on it, and it sort of ends up being this really big mess of the decisions of the umpires, the bounce of the ball, the quality of the players, the hometown advantage, and so on and so forth. And I think a momentum in particular is really hard to arrest. The number one thing that typically clubs go back to, or teams that are any good go back to, is there is one opportunity that you absolutely have, no matter what happens in a game, to arrest momentum, and that is the centre bounce. Once the goal's been kicked, the ball always goes back there, and therefore the players have the chance to win the ball and straight away put it in our forward half. And I think that's where, the likes of Bont and Libba and Treloar and those types have been really strong in that area in the last year or two. And now it's obviously about being able to actually put some scoreboard pressure back, because it's quite quick to break momentum, particularly if you can hit the scoreboard. The challenge I think that we had last night in particular was we just couldn't hit the scoreboard. We couldn't turn it around really, because there was no pressure on Hawthorn to actually start doing things differently, because they got a 5-goal gap. And then we really never closed it across the course of the game. We
got it to 10 a couple of times. Yeah, there was that time when Ed Richards just took it out of the centre and kicked the goal from 50, in a microsecond. I thought, here we go, just do that again. But we couldn't. We couldn't get momentum at all.
Yeah. It's a tough part of the game. It really is. And I think, it's been on our side just as many times as it's been on the opposition side. Is the simplest way to put it. But I think of Bont, like Bont is the ultimate momentum killer for opposition teams, or has been over the course of his career. Like, you can think back to so many periods of time when out of nowhere he would just stand up, kick a goal out of the middle, stand up, take a mark down forward, stand up, lay a big tackle, look, whatever. And he just do it when everyone else was going, geez, they're running over the top of us.
Yeah, he keeps a cool
always
head.
find a way.
All right,
So.
another question from Heather. She wants to know from you. She doesn't care about my opinion here. How much does the crowd atmosphere really have an effect on the play, or do you just learn to block it all out?
No, it definitely has an effect. Absolutely. Like, in particular, I'd say when there is like, to the conversation we just had, when there is momentum playing into it, there is nothing better than being a player who kicks one of those 2 or 3 quick goals when the crowd really gets up and about. You kick a good goal, turn to the crowd, get complete. Like, it's awesome. It's the best part of footy. It happened to me a few times. There's nothing like it. So the point is, if you want to be the 12th man, if you will, of footy as a fan, the more that you can rev up and try and create some of that momentum yourself, the better.
All right, be louder. That's what you heard, all of you. Just get in there. Bring the thunder. I always say bring the thunder, and people think I'm referencing the Sydney Swans. Shake down the thunder. I'm referencing Thor, Chris Hemsworth, who definitely is listening to this pod right now. Thor, we have the god of thunder. He slayed giants. That's what we need. Bring the thunder. Be Thor. This is from Kirk. We've improved this year and late last year. We improved our strength significantly, but we haven't fixed our weak areas as much at all. When good teams are switched on, we can't match them. We lose close games. And before we get too pumped about the season and re-sign Bevo, this needs to change. In 2015 and 16, we won a bunch of close games and thrived on big contests. Any observations on what the current team needs to change to thrive as well?
In those close games?
Yeah.
Oh, this is the problem. Like, the fans always see it because, and this is the challenge of being a head coach, the fans always see it as like a coach problem. But every game that we've been close in this year has been a different issue that I would diagnose. Like, last night wouldn't be what I would call a close game, even though it was.
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
In some ways.
It was debacle.
It wasn't a to and fro between two teams. It was sort of like them leading and us threatening to come back. And just to do it really quickly, so we lose Collingwood. We do an absolute unbelievable game without some of our best players, and we get a poor umpiring free kick that really takes the wind out of our sails with 2 minutes to go.
Yep.
You could look at the Freo game, and it was our young players who made mistakes, frankly. Ran out of legs, poor decision by foot and hand, gave them a goal or two back in the last quarter. You then look at Brisbane, which I know wasn't maybe the closest by the end. We lose a play early. We got young players on the park. We run out of juice. They run over the top of us. Really, very much. And it looked like to me a fitness thing based on what had happened throughout the game and who we had on the field. Gold Coast, up against it conditions-wise.
Yep.
We make a couple of little errors. They, a bit slicker and a bit cleaner. We had our chances.
Geelong.
Absolutely had our chances.
Geelong, luck.
Geelong, I'm on a plane from Bali, so who knows? Not diagnosing that one. But I think this is the point is, are we making the same mistakes over and over again? Because that's a coaching problem versus circumstance problem, which is not to say the coach doesn't have influence, but in each of those games, I would say there's a slightly different issue that has popped up. Now, what you can guarantee is that Luke is sitting there, and I would bet almost anything on this is happening, and going, we have lost X amount of games under X amount of points for the year. This is an issue for us. And if we hadn't lost those games, we sit at 9 and whatever that math is, 3.
Yeah.
9 and 3, right? So in the training sessions, I guarantee they're doing every single week last minute scenarios. They're doing last 5-minute scenarios. They're doing how do we play from behind by a goal and in front by a goal and what's our priorities and so on and so forth. They'd be doing that every week for every game because that is an absolute priority. And what was it? Was it Heather who asked the question?
Kirk.
So for Kirk's question, Heather was the previous one.
She was.
It's exactly the right thinking that this is something that they will be trying to train for because, as you said, this is when seasons are won and lost.
Okay. All right. We'll go with that. There's a few.
We got to go. We've still got to do the Patreon.
We've got to go behind the paywall in a sec. Yeah. All right. Let's do some gigs facts. This is a new segment. We're going to get. I'm thinking we get a little jingle for it. Maybe like Footloose. Gig facts. Gig facts. Stuff to make your mind cracks. All right. You get 3 for this week because we, as I said, the other ones. All right. Here we go. Most wins by 90 points since 2015 for all clubs. We have 9. Geelong have 8. Adelaide and GWS have 7. Everyone else has less than that. Essendon, Gold Coast, North Melbourne haven't won a single game by more than 90 points since 2015. We have 9. Look at that.
Can you ask me for fun ones like that to guess who these teams are? Because that'd be fun.
Okay, sure. All right.
That's the next fact. Let's go.
All right, second gig fact. All right. Last night's game was Bevo's 360th match as a player and coach. None of his first 359 games has ended in a draw. He has matched John Blakey as a 360-game player coach with no draws. Now, Ken Hinkley is ahead of him, 417 drawless games. But Hinkley's one of his games was the 2017 elimination final against West Coast, which they lost in extra time. In other words, scores were level at the final siren. Do you believe, Boydie, that excludes Ken from the list?
Yes.
Okay, therefore, Bevo takes the title, even ahead of Blakey, who played in the first ever extra time final in 1993. So, 360 games without a draw, Bevo is now the winner.
Yeah. Obviously, the question is home and away games versus finals. But yeah, I think finals are included in it. So.
Damn straight. All right. Final thing. I can turn this into a question for you. 10 years ago, today, 6th of June, what were we doing and which bull god made his debut?
2015.
Yes.
6th
It
of
was,
June.
you were playing?
Oh, the redhead.
What, Ed Richards?
Did he debut? Yeah.
Nope.
That would be about Bailey Dale?
Nope.
That'd be also close-ish, wouldn't it?
No, it's someone we really like. Sadly, not at the club anymore. Well,
Toby.
playing. Toby McLean is correct. Toby McLean made his debut against Port Adelaide, came on as a sub. We lost that game.
Do you know what's so funny? So when I said Bailey Dale, I couldn't remember if that was his first game, but I was thinking it was the Port Adelaide game because I did play against it. I know Bailey played.
And there we go.
And we did lose, correct. We actually played all right, I think, but we didn't lose by much from memory.
Yeah, it was, yeah. I mean, and this is the stuff we got to, I mean, human brain always looks for patterns in crisis time. So I was looking at how we go after the bye and things. But yeah, 10 years ago, 2015, great year. We lost to Port Adelaide. We'd beaten GWS the week before in the Ryan Griffin rematch, but we'd lost a bunch of games before that. So look, it happens. And this is going to be a regular segment. What happened 10 years ago? We're going to do it a bit more for this year and a lot next year for the 10-year reunion of the greatest year of our lives. All right, we've got a few more questions. If you want to join the Patreon, it's only $5 a month. Well, and you can give us more money and you'll get a free T-shirt, you get Boydie's book, you get some stubby holders. I'm thinking of making some new merch with I think I've said this on air, but Bond as James Bond, 004. Just if anyone's a graphic designer can help me do that. I think we should put it on mugs. That'd be fun. So yeah, all of that is available to you, and you will answer. We will get into Bond's contract, and all of that happening is behind the paywall right now.
I gave my childhood to that roar of the red, white, and blue sea. And the knowledge that you had to love the Bulldog boys and me. 20 years on, I feel that longing hanging in September air. But The reason I go every week is to pretend you're still there. And they will find the glory one day, and I will throw it at your feet. It's a long, long road they're running for you, the dogs of Footscray streets. It's a long, long road they're running for you, the dogs of Footscray streets.